Ilhan Omar is being told, turn over your texts, your emails, your communications by Tuesday. And this is not a rumor. This is not a blog post. This is a deadline. And somehow people still acting like this whole thing is just made up. It's pretty weird. Like it's really weird. So let's go ahead and walk through it.
Minnesota lawmakers are asking Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to respond by Tuesday regarding questions about a statewide child nutrition fraud scheme. The lawmakers are seeking Omar's written and electronic communications involving the state's Feeding Our Future program, which misused millions of dollars in taxpayer funds. State lawmakers specifically hoping to look at Omar's correspondence with the owners of the Safari restaurant. State lawmakers point out Omar was a regular at that restaurant, staging many campaign events there. Its owners recently pleaded guilty for their role in the $250 million fraud scheme. Now, Omar's team and allies have largely framed allegations trying to link her to fraud as politically motivated and not substantiated. But for more on this, we are joined by Minnesota State Representative Kristen Robbins tonight. She is the chair of the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Committee, also a candidate for Minnesota governor.
Well,
appreciate you being here.
This right here
today and sharing your perspective. And I know we're...
Oh, but she's not saying anything else. This right here, that's not, commentary. That's a request with a timestamp on it right there. They're not asking politely. They're saying, produce the records. We need to see it. And here's where it kind of gets a little funny, right? When regular people get audited, you don't get a press tour. That's not what happens. You don't get defenders on TV saying this is politically motivated. You either hand over the paperwork or it gets real uncomfortable real fast. But in politics, suddenly accountability is under attack.
If Nick Shirley is lying, then prove him wrong. But they can't do that. You actually have him now on CBS. A lady did a report where she called some Somalian daycares that was on the list, and only one of them answered. She even said that, which actually proves Nick Shirley right. Then they're also coming out saying that this is racism. This ain't racism. It's obvious what's going on. This is a community of people who are defrauding the American people. So all of these folks who standing behind them, y'all making fools of yourself, because you know what? They're conning and frauding you and got you standing behind them for help. And y'all falling right into the trap, which don't make no sense to me. And then this whole Leering Center thing, and I got to get one of them sweatshirts from Nick Shirley. But this whole Leering Center thing, is that not obvious to you that a place that is called, supposed to be called a learning center, spelled learning wrong? That's a red flag. But y'all still getting behind that crap. It's so obvious what's going on with the Somalian community. And keep in mind this, if you go online, there are tons of videos now where people are coming out, not just from Minnesota, but from Maine and other states that are reporting these same issues with Somalians and these daycare centers. Also home health centers, mental rehab centers, and so on and so forth. So what has happened is they've actually figured out a way to defraud the American people, and they found a chink in the armor, and they're exploiting it. But another problem is a lot of this is coming from the top. Somebody at the top should be knowing exactly what's going on. And they do know what's going on, and they're letting it happen because they want those votes. They are trying to change the demographics of states in this country by actually, I think that's a way of buying votes. One more thing. Does it not dawn on people that a lot of these child care facilities would not even let Nick Shirley in? Keep in mind this, even if they would let him in, they wouldn't have taken his son. They only want Somalian children there, which begs the question, are they discriminating if they are actually running the daycare? Is it only Somalian children that can go to these daycares with public funds? Just something to think about.
Now, this part right here, this is where the conversation always gets flipped. Every time somebody starts asking questions, the response isn't, here's the proof. It's, why are you asking? It's like somebody checking your pockets, and instead of emptying them, you start arguing with them about why they looked. If it's false, clear it up. Simple. But Don't try to turn basic questions into a moral crime. That's getting old, especially with stuff like this.
Go to work, white boy. White woman, go to work for me. White male, go to work. Pay your taxes. Right now, this moment. What are you waiting for? Ain't you supposed to be at work? Go to work, white boy. Do it right now. Go to work, white boy. White woman, go to work for me.
To be a freeloader, I get everything for free while you work 50 hours a week. Ha ha, boo boo. Somalians is taking proud.
American, how you guys doing? Thank you for providing a good life for me. Thank you. I'm using your money. Work hard. Now you go to work for me. White woman, white man, right now do it. Don't play with me. I'm fucking serious. Hello, American. How you guys doing?
There's a trouble with a heartbreak. It's gonna hang around. Leave you midnight breaking down. Wonder how long that it's gonna take. Getting over her is the can drown. Whiskey down, water dirt. They so mad at me because I'm a freeloader. I didn't do anything bad. I'm just trying to eat like you. Leave me alone. They just mad at me because I'm a freeloader.
Yeah, I already know. People watching that clip got two reactions. If you're ignorant, some of y'all laughing. Some of y'all sitting there like, ain't no way. But here's the real issue. Whether this guy's trolling or he's dead serious, it doesn't even matter. The fact that this kind of content can even exist and immediately feel believable to people, it doesn't come out of nowhere. That's what happens when folks start feeling like the system's being gamed and nobody at the top is even pretending to stop it. And instead of addressing, that feeling, they tell you you're the problem for noticing it. That's pretty backwards.
Let's take Ilhan Omar as an example, okay? She comes from a family, and they call her a refugee who came from Somalia, right? They call her a refugee. Her family were the governing party, the Marxist Islamist government in Somalia, who were overthrown and then fled. Now, technically that makes her a refugee, but she wasn't fleeing oppression, or rather her family weren't fleeing oppression, they were fleeing justice. They were fleeing their own people, holding them to account for the dictatorship that they had established. So you have people like the Omar family, and what do? Do they come to America and see America and go, okay, this is pretty cool. They're not oppressing each other. Let's be part of this. No, they go, hey, how can we oppress them? How can we bring Marxism to America? That's the thought process, and it may be a passive thought process, but it's the thought process. Well, let's take Ilhan Omar as an example.
Now, this is where things start getting stretched. Because people love jumping from questions about today straight into rewriting somebody's entire life story. So let's keep it real. You don't need conspiracy theories from 30 years ago to explain what's happening right now. If there's an issue, it's sitting right in front of you. Deadlines, investigations, actual money that disappeared. You don't need to go digging through history books when the current chapter ain't even finished yet.
Ilhan Omar was born on October 4th, 1982, in Mogadishu, Somalia, to father Nur Omar Mohammed and mother, this is a mouthful, Faduma Abukar Haji Hussein. Now, she claims to be the youngest of 7 children. Her mother was ethnic Bandiri, the descendants of Arab, Persian, and Indian traders who were historically a wealthy cosmopolitan merchant class. Now, sadly, she passed away when Ilhan was approximately 2 years old around 1984 under circumstances that have never been publicly reported. Ilhan was subsequently brought up by her father and grandfather, but has also spoken about her elder sisters and aunts stepping in to help fill her mother's absence. Nur Omar Mohammed, Ilhan's father, was an ethnic Somali from the Majarteen clan and a Soviet-trained colonel in the Somali National Army under dictator Siad Barre. Ilhan's grandfather, Abukar, was equally embedded in the same state apparatus, serving as director of Somalia's national marine transport under the same regime. Nur Omar Mohammed, Ilhan's father, was an ethnic Somali from the Majarteen clan and a Soviet-trained colonel in the Somali National Army under dictator Siad Barre. Ilhan's grandfather, Abukar, was equally embedded in that same state apparatus, serving as director of Somalia's national marine transport under the same regime. So this is not one man with a complicated past. This is a family with 2 generations of senior appointments inside of a brutal Soviet-aligned dictatorship. So when the Somali Civil War broke out in 1991, the family fled because both sides of Ilhan's heritage put the family in danger. The Benadiri were widely resented for their wealth and their prosperity, and her father and grandfather's positions drew a different kind of threat. The Barre regime had just collapsed, and its officers were now marked men. The militias and rival clans who filled the vacuum were hunting them. And to understand this, you got to know the context. You got to know how evil the Barre regime actually was. So Barre seized power in October of 1969, and he ruled Somalia as a dictator until January of 1991. He described his ideology as scientific socialism, a fusion of Marxism and Quranic interpretation, which is a combo that's starting to sound pretty familiar, isn't it? From the Islamic Republic in Iran to Mamdani's New York, it certainly gives you something to think about. By the 1980s, the regime's consolidation of power escalated into what's now recognized as the ISAC genocide, a campaign of mass killing, aerial bombardment, and forced displacement targeting civilians in northern Somalia. And estimates range from 50,000 to 200,000 people dead. The UN Development Program later concluded that Barre's regime had one of the worst human rights records in Africa. And Ilhan's father was a colonel in that army throughout those years, not a peripheral figure, a ranking officer in the command structure of a militarily active regime carrying out genocide. So human rights investigators and Somali diaspora researchers have argued that his rank and his position in the command chain during those specific years raised serious questions about his involvement. Eyewitness accounts documented in advocacy reports describe mass executions by firing squad carried out by officers at exactly his level. And this is where the record first begins to contradict itself. When Nur Omar Mohammed, her father, applied for asylum in the United States in 1995, he presented himself publicly as a teacher trainer, a civilian educator. Now, that's the description that appeared in his obituary. That's how his daughter described him in her memoir. And that, critics allege, is how he characterized himself to immigration authorities while omitting that he was a highly decorated military officer who'd served at the operational level of a genocidal regime. This guy claimed to be fleeing the Barre regime. He was the Barre regime. So critics don't characterize him as a refugee. They characterize him as a toppled operative who fled not oppression, but consequence. A man escaping retribution for the government he had served, not persecution by it. Now, no federal agency has ever formally examined that claim, and the asylum application remains a sealed DHS record. Nur Omar Mohammed died of COVID-19 in 2020, so whatever falsehoods existed with regard to what he told immigration authorities may have died with him unless those records get unsealed.
Well. Now, see, this is what people try to wave it off like it's too much or it's irrelevant. It's not, because background matters when you're dealing with power, influence, and decision-making. You can't spend years building a public image one way, then get upset when people start asking if the full story actually lines up. And notice something. Nobody's asking for perfection. They're asking for consistency. If your story checks out, cool. But if the pieces don't line up, people are going to dig. It's not hate. That's just literal human nature. And, let's just be real for a second. If this was somebody on the other side of the aisle, man, if this was somebody on the right, we wouldn't be having let's be careful conversation right now. This would be getting torched 24/7. So, as many of us would say, you can miss me with that outrage, that selective outrage,
which is barely a country. They have no anything. They just run around killing each other. There's no structure. And when I see somebody like Ilhan Omar, who I don't know at all, but I always watch her for years. I've watched her complain about our Constitution, how she's being treated badly. Our Constitution, the United States of America, is a bad place. Hates everybody, hates Jewish people, hates everybody. And I think she's an incompetent person. She's a real terrible person. But when I watch what is happening in Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes, or however many lakes they have, they got a lot of lakes, but this beautiful place, and I see these people ripping it off, And now I'm understanding, and you're going to look at that's. I hear they ripped off Somalians, ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point.
And this right here, this is what happens when people feel like the system's been played in their face. You don't get reactions like this from Trump out of thin air. This comes from years of people watching headlines like billions gone, programs abused, nobody's held accountable. And then you got Trump who finally said something aggressive about it. And that's what people want to focus on. Not the fraud, not the investigation, not the deadline. No, the tone. That's how you know people's priorities are just off. Because if the system was tight, if oversight actually worked, if people believed things were being handled properly, comments like that wouldn't even land. But they do. And they land because there's already frustration sitting underneath everything. So now we're back at square one. A deadline that isn't going away. Scandal that didn't just disappear. And a whole lot of people suddenly pretending this is all just coincidence, but it's not. You don't get this many questions, this many connections, this much attention for no reason. At some point, the conversation has to shift from why are people talking about this to, all right, what actually happened? Because until that gets answered clearly, this isn't dying down. Not online, not politically, just not anywhere. So, you made it to the end of this video. I want you to type "run the records" in the comment section for me real quick, if you don't mind. Y'all be safe, please. Go check on somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.